Debate.
You should see the ticker start.
All right, the Improvement Service Committee will come to order. We'll note Alderman Vanderleest is present, Alderman Nenning is present, Alderman Weary is present, and Alderman Nicholson is excused. Can I have an approval of the minutes from April 27, 2016?
Move to approve.
Motion by Alderman Nenning, second by Alderman Vanderleest. Discussion, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carried. Number 2 is an approval of the agenda. Any changes here?
I would just ask that we take number 9, report of the purchasing manager, next, to accommodate our staff.
All right, let's try it with the committee then. We'll do 9 as our next agenda item. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Number 9, report of the purchasing manager. A and B, A is request approval to purchase automated refuse trucks from Quality Truck Care Center, Inc. for $490,796. Yes, sir.
We put this out for an RFQ, and we received 4 responses. One response was for the body only, and we had written a spec for a chassis and body combination. We did not consider vendor number 4. Vendor number 1, who was the apparent low bidder, did not meet specifications. Primarily, their chassis was not to specification. That was the biggest fault. So the recommendation is to award to the next lowest vendor, which is Quality Truck Care Center, for 2 chassis, a total of $490,796, chassis and body combinations.
Any questions, committee?
Is that vehicle ready to go then?
No, these are built to order.
Built to order.
Takes probably 6 to 8 months to get this equipment.
So in other words, they need 2 of them right now, is what you're saying, or in the near future, you're gonna need 2 of them?
Yes,
Yes,
Steve
we-
can
we
address
will-
that.
We will need 2.
Any other questions?
Are they within what we had budgeted for?
They are.
Okay.
Okay, motion.
Move to approve the recommendation.
Motion by Alderman Nenning. Their second. Second by Alderman Vanderleest to approve the purchase for $490,796. Discussion, those in favor? Aye. Opposed, motion carried. B, request approval to purchase surveyor workstations from Topcon Solutions for $19,615.
This was a purchase that was included in the 2015 surplus expenditures. Department secured 3 quotes from qualified vendors for this surveyor equipment. The recommendation is to award to the low bidder, Topcon Solutions, for $19,615.
Questions from the committee?
I'd move to approve the award to a low bidder
Motion by Alderman Nenning.
as recommended.
Second. Alderman Vanderleest to approve. Discussion, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Number 4, request by Alderman Scannell to look into building the East River Trail with solar pavement. We had this item on our Parks agenda and,
Number
3, I jumped right over it. No, request by Alderman Zima on behalf, we don't want to forget Alderman Zima. Request by Alderman Zima on behalf of all people who cross the Walnut Street Bridge that the Department of Public Works provide emergency repairs to the railroad crossing at about 100 West Walnut Street. Staff?
This came forward, the request was made by Alderman Zima at the March 15th council meeting, and at the subsequent meeting of the Improvement Service Committee, we did indicate that there's a process that's identified under state statute that we are bound to follow. So essentially what happens is if we find a crossing in disrepair, we first have to notify the railroad and request that they correct that issue. If they fail to comply within a certain time period, we can then adopt a resolution which comes through council ordering the repair completed. They have a statutory time in which they have to respond. If they fail to do so, we can then petition the Office of Commissioner of Railroads for the state of Wisconsin and request a hearing. And what Alderman Zima was asking is for us to, if there's a process for us to shorten that time period up and instead simply go and complete the repairs using our forces or contracted forces, and then invoice the railroad for failure to comply. And we indicated that based on staff's reading of state statute, that was not indeed the case. We are not allowed to do that. So what he asked is to send this to law department to get that reviewed. The city attorney stated that there seemed to be a little bit of ambiguity in the state statute, and I received a response from the city attorney today. She indicates that from reading case law, it's clear that Wisconsin statutes 86.12 used to authorize municipalities to complete repair work and provide for the recovery of costs incurred therewith. While I've not been able to pin down exactly when the amendment occurred, at some point, the statutes were reworded to instead require the municipality to go through the complaint procedure that is in effect today. Given that the legislator specifically removed the language allowing the municipality to complete the repair and cover costs, it is specifically disallowed. The confusion coming from the ambiguous language suggests that the repair and recovery repair and recovery were possible makes more sense now, given the fact that it used to be permitted. However, it no longer is. So when they reworded the statute to take that provision out, there was one small sentence that got missed that talked about a recovery cost. But the process that was described previously is indeed the process we need to follow. So we cannot simply go onto the railroad property. And that's essentially what this boils down to. Wherever the railroad crosses a city street, more often than not, the way the statute was written is, again, to cover the majority of instances, and more often than not in Wisconsin, rail lines predate platted streets. So the railroad actually owns that right-of-way where it crosses our city street. It becomes a property issue. We're not allowed to trespass on their property and complete work. Okay, so that's why we have to go through the process. That's more than likely, that's why the statute was revised, no longer allowing municipalities to simply complete the repairs and invoice the railroad.
Has the railroad been contacted at this point?
Actually, as luck would have it, there were 3 crossings that we requested them to repair back in 2014, and the work never got done. We followed the process, and in late 14, October 2014, we petitioned the OCR's office to get the hearing, and OCR never acted on it. Just 2 days ago, I received a letter from the OCR stating that the hearings are being scheduled. So there's been a change with the commissioner. There's a new commissioner down there. Senator Dave Hansen brought the commissioner up to my office, and we met in late January, early February. And he did apologize. The commissioner apologized for the response level that had been coming out of that office over the past couple of years, and he did promise that they were making steps to do a better job and become more timely, and I think we're seeing it. We hosted an OCR hearing about a month ago to talk about the State Trunk Highway 32 project through Ashwaubenon, De Pere and Ashwaubenon. They were doing an adequacy study to make sure the signals on the intersecting roads to Ashland Avenue were adequate to allow the DOT to complete that project. So that, again, for a timely response, that was a good thing. And now we've got the response on the crossings that we've asked for. The Improvement Service Committee has given my office very clear direction that they wanted me to start a queue. Just start notifying the railroad of deficient crossings, and let's get this process moving. So we're in the process of putting that list together, sending it over to the CN, and requesting them to complete the crossing repairs. If they don't, I'll be coming back to the council with resolutions, and we're going to start knocking these things off one at a time.
What's the time frame between ordering repairs and the resolution?
The hearing,
5 years?
no. I think once the resolution goes in, I think they have either 60 or 90 days to comply, and if they fail to do so, then we can petition the OCR's office.
Before that, though, you order repairs, and then how long do they have to respond?
Offhand, I don't know. Again, it's in the statute, so we follow the statute process.
Questions?
I guess, if there truly is if there is a significant emergency kind of situation, our alternative is close the street.
Correct.
And, but, obviously, something like Walnut Street, it's not feasible to close that unless it gets to that point. While we're following what the law says we should do, and keep our fingers crossed and hope it gets resolved.
And specific to the Walnut Street crossing, I just traveled across that earlier today. I specifically went over there to take a look at it, and what it appears, at least on an initial blush, I didn't get out of the vehicle, walk around, I simply drove over it. It looks like that there's a small, that's a concrete street, so there's a small strip of asphalt, then there's a composite material immediately adjacent to the tracks, and then it becomes asphalt, and then we're back to concrete. It looks like those two small pieces of asphalt, those two patches, are actually humped up a little bit. So when you travel across the crossing, you hit a bump, you hit a valley, you hit a bump, and then you hit the road again. So is it an inconvenience? Absolutely. Could have done a better job? Without a doubt. Is it as bad as some of the crossings in town? Not even in the same ballpark, but it's on a major thoroughfare, so I think that one might be a little easier to get taken care of. What I'm gonna do is talk to the CN, have them come over and see if we can't just meet out there someday, and we might be able to go and just do a quick surface mill with it to knock those two humps off and make it more trafficable. So that one, there's a very low-cost investment on behalf of the CN, and most often that's what the problem is. If you talk to the track supervisor for the CN, he's gonna tell you how many hundreds of crossings he has under his jurisdiction, and he tells us that corporate only gives him enough money to repair 2 crossings a year, and he's got basically the upper Midwest, 3 or 4 states worth of crossings. So take that for what it's worth. If a municipality provides funding, then they're more than happy to do the repairs. Well, that's not our responsibility, it's their responsibility. But on something like this, again, especially this one on Walnut Street, if it indeed turns out to be a milling type of a repair, that can be accomplished in a matter of an hour or so. We simply just close the road down for an hour, do the milling across the street, and it's back to not being bumpy. So I will reach out to CN to see if that could be done, so we can at least get that one taken care of. And then again, we've started preparing a list. We're gonna send that list into the CN, say here are the crossings that need immediate repair in the city of Green Bay. You have until this date to comply, and if they fail to do it, we'll start the OCR process.
I'll probably have one to add on the list. I think there's like a grate on the one on Military Avenue.
Military at Western?
Yeah.
Got it on the list.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, that grate's been missing. I think the plow might have knocked it to the side. when it
Well,
was up.
that one, that's actually a specific case that we're talking to the OCR's office about, because the statute requires the railroad to keep a crossing in good repair. It doesn't dictate what material is used. On certain streets, especially our arterials, our higher volume streets, the city of Green Bay requires that a higher level crossing. So the basic crossing, the lowest quality crossing that's out there is what's referred to as a dapped timber. So that's the large timbers that run perpendicular to the road. And then an asphalt approach to the dapped timber. So you hit asphalt, dapped timber, rail. There's asphalt between the rails, rail, dapped timber, asphalt, and then back onto your regular road, okay? On a higher volume street, those don't last, we know that. So we have, in the past, we've required that either a concrete crossing material to replace the dapped timber, or a rubber crossing, which is what you see on Military.
That's what's missing there.
And now the rubber has fallen out of favor. They simply don't last as long, and people aren't manufacturing those rubber crossings anymore. So they've got a composite, it looks like composite wood. If you go up on the north end of Military Avenue before you go over I-43, you'll find a composite crossing there. There's also one on North Broadway near James Street, okay? Those seem to be working pretty well. So we require on certain streets that an upgraded crossing material be used. The arrangement that we've always had, and this goes back at least 20 years based on my review of the files, the city buys that material and then the railroad puts it in, because we're requiring something more, so we're gonna pay the difference, cost difference. So we simply buy the materials, they do the installation, we call it good. That was the case on Military Avenue during 2010's reconstruction of Military. We wanted an upgraded crossing, so we purchased the materials. That upgraded crossing lasted less than 5 years. We don't, given the amount of money that we spent, city taxpayer funding that was spent on that, for that crossing to last less than 5 years, we are petitioning the OCR to have them make those repairs at no cost to the city. Normally, on an upgraded crossing like that, we'd buy the rubber panels again, because we want a higher grade. But, yeah, a 5-year window's not enough. So, yeah, we got that one on the list for you.
Okay.
Okay, so, make a motion to
We got
receive and.
Alderman
Alderman Sawyer, West Side Sawyer.
Yes. Steve, I was going to ask, thank you, Chair. You know, you have a list
We do.
of some of these, and I know that there's another one also in John's district on Taylor, and where Taylor crosses the railroad. And I think that,
Taylor near Western?
yeah, no, that might be in Howard though. I mean,
Nope, part of that's in the city.
So how does that work when you deal with other communities that are adjoining?
Well, I can talk to you about that, or talk to you, Alderman, separately about that. I don't think there's anything wrong with the crossing over there. The issue that we had with that one was there used to be a switch that's part of the Howard Spur, and there was a siding over there. And given where the switch gear was located on the east side of Taylor Street, we weren't able to put the sidewalk through there because the switch gear has to have the ability to move, and we couldn't get a sidewalk through it. I believe 2 years ago that switch gear was finally removed, and we just have a straight track through there now, a spur track. And I think the sidewalk was put in last year, but I'm not positive. But this is the first I've heard about any issues with ride quality on the
I don't
ride
know
on
if
the
it's on
crossing.
that one, but there's a couple on the west side. I know that when you're driving, it might have been the one in Military where they actually, you know, when you go over it, it actually raises up. I mean, a portion of, and that might be the wood. Like I said, you're going over it at 30 miles an hour or 25 when you slow down to go over that. So, but I just noticed that there's some raise in that.
One of the things that you will find, especially with a reconstructed crossing, a newly repaired crossing, is it's going to be a bump for a while. The reason for that is there's only so much that you can do with mechanical compaction. Okay, so when they put the crossing in, they prep the subgrade and they put the large ballast rock in there, then they lay the ties down and they put the rails down. They intentionally set it a little bit high because over time, with the train going across it, it'll settle, and what they want is over time, they want it to come back down to where everything's parallel or flat. They don't want to start off flat and create a dip because a hump is actually easier on the vehicle and less disruptive to the rider than this big dip is.
No, and that's fine and good, Steve, but I guess what I'm talking about is that, you know, you got the whole width of the crossing. And when you go across, like, just a portion of it will come up. It's almost like it's broken or.
Oh, yeah, there's a panel like that. There was a
It comes up in
panel.
the middle. It's not all the way across, it's just a portion within
That,
that
and what
raises.
you're seeing is that's probably a concrete crossing. So it's a concrete panel material that's both in between the rails and slightly outside the rails. There was one of those that did exactly that at the Ashland Avenue crossing. So on the east side of Ashland Avenue, or east side of Ashland on Lombardi, there was exactly one of those panels, and that's exactly what happened. Was
I worry about
it
that
broke
coming
and
up
it
into your
flipped up,
car.
and that was one that was on our list, one that we ordered repaired, and before OCR scheduled the hearing, that one got repaired last year. So yes, we are aware of those types of issues too.
Okay, do we have a list of all the crossings that we have in the city?
We've
How
got,
many are there? I mean, is there any?
offhand, I don't know,
Okay, I know. I'm
but
just
we do
saying.
have them inventoried in the GIS system, yes.
It would be nice to see that, and I realize that they're not all in need of repair,
Correct.
but I think just to keep a handle on it so that as we move forward, we can.
What we started doing was we started rating them on a 1 to 10 scale like we do with our road ratings, with the intent of picking off the worst ones first. And then the other thing we're doing with that data is we're actively going to look at that to determine if there are crossings that aren't used on a regular basis and petition the railroad to see if we can have those crossings permanently removed from service so they don't become a maintenance issue down the line.
Okay, well, that'd just be good information to have, and I don't know if that's something over a period, maybe, you know, with this committee, every 3 months or so, just report on it, how that's going. It would be, instead of us bringing up things all the time, it would just be nice to have a handle that you could come forward and say, no new issues, things are going fine. I don't know.
Yeah, the Improvement Services Committee has been getting reports periodically on where we are with this, and, you know, I would think that it costs a CN something to, when the Commissioner of Railroad has a hearing, they have to send someone to those hearings,
Correct.
you would think. So, you know, the more of those that there are, maybe they'll start to realize that they need to more aggressively maintain their crossings. And
Mhm.
that's at least the theory. We'll see how it works, but got to do something.
That's good, I'm good with that, thank you.
Anyone else? Any other questions? Otherwise, what are your wishes? Thanks for the info, Steve.
Well, I think
Yes, you have more?
we've accomplished what Alderman Zima asked us to do, so I think receive and place on file would be appropriate at this time.
Okay.
Motion by Alderman
Second.
Vanderleest, second by Alderman Manning to receive and place on file. Any discussion? Those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Number 4, request by Alderman Scannell to look into building the East River Trail with solar pavement. We did have that one on the Parks Committee and discussed it and received it and placed it on file due to lack of evidence that it's being used much in the U.S. and high cost at this time. It's still experimental, so I don't know if that's your...
Move to receive it and place it on file.
Motion by Alderman Manning to receive and place on file, second by Alderman Vanderleest. Discussion, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carried. Number 5, request by Alderman Scannell to look into how the city might regulate lead paint. Director.
I understand where the Alderman is going with this. Unfortunately for us, lead paint regulation generally does not occur within the right-of-way, so it's simply outside of the DPW's jurisdiction. So I would be more than happy to pass this along to both law department and potentially the inspection department to see if there's something that could be done up there. But as far as what DPW can do, we don't use any lead-based paints, and we don't allow lead-based paints to be utilized within the right-of-way. All of our pavement marking paints are non-lead containing, so.
Could we perhaps refer this to legal and report to protection and welfare? That'd seem more of their purview.
That would be
than ours.
perfectly fine.
Good.
Refer to law and
That's Randy's.
P&W.
Is that okay with the committee? I mean, I'll entertain a
Basically,
motion.
on the lead paint and asbesto, I think the state of Wisconsin has their hand. In other words, if you're gonna do any kind of removal, you have to have a licensed contractor remove
Certainly.
asbesto. In the same way with lead paint. In other words, if you're in an older home, it's very strictly regulated. You're not allowed to, start tearing off the woodwork. It has to be all, vented properly, and, you can't have any sanding. It has to be covered. I think the state of Wisconsin, might be a starting point just to see the regulations that they have as far as asbesto and lead paint. See, lead paint basically was from, the 40s and 50s and into the 60s. And when you start touching it, that's where you get the problem.
Well, what the Alderman has indicated here is in 2013, Act 20 of 2013 exempted manufacturers of lead-based paint from any product liability. 2015, Act 55 changed the definition of a lead-bearing paint to allow a higher lead content in paint. And Act 122 reduces the state lead paint inspection and testing requirements. So again, I understand where he's going, but not something that's under our jurisdiction.
I move to refer it to the law department and protection and welfare committee to review further.
I second it.
Motion by Alderman Manning, second by Alderman Vanderleest to refer this to the legal department and report to protection and welfare committee. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Number 6, request by Department of Public Works to award a professional engineering service contract to the low responsive bidder for engineering design services for stormwater basins 106, 108, 116, 130, and 162 hydrologic hydraulic analysis.
I believe you should have in your packet, I think there's a table in there that summarizes the engineering design services request for proposals. We went out to 3 companies that we know have this ability. Again, what we're looking at doing is the hydrologic and hydraulic analysis on several of the basins. This is the stormwater studies that we're talking about. And we have to do the H&H study. We need to understand what the basin and how the pipes interconnect with each other so that we know what kind of a fix to recommend. So we went out to 3 companies, Brown & Caldwell, Donahue Associates, and McMahon. McMahon came back with a price quotation of $96,400 as opposed to Brown & Caldwell at $129,530. So our recommendation would be to enter into a professional services contract with McMahon and Associates. Again, that $96,400 cost includes a $30,000 cost for the software. So McMahon will acquire the software, run the initial calculations, and then they'll also provide training to our staff so that we can continue to do the maintenance on these and do further evaluations in the future.
Thank you, Director. Was this money already approved, or is this coming out of, which?
No, this was the H&H study, that was part of the CIP.
I think it's in the CIP
Yep.
this year.
That was part of the capital program from the stormwater section.
It's interesting that task 3, the software acquisition, was $1,000 under Brown & Caldwell and $30,000 under McMahon.
I can answer that.
Yeah.
Brown & Caldwell planned on using the EPA available software. They have free software, but the free software is not as in-depth as the software that McMahon was using. McMahon is going out on the marketplace and buying a canned software package, and that's the main difference there.
And that's what we prefer.
Absolutely.
Yes.
The software package that McMahon is proposing has a lot more data input and provides a much more tailored type of an analysis as opposed to the generalized software that's available through EPA.
Okay. Move to approve the recommendation to award the contract to McMahon.
Motion by Alderman Nennig, second by Alderman Vanderleest to approve the contract to McMahon for $96,400.
How is this gonna help us as far as,
Discussion, Alderman Vanderleest.
excuse me, I was just gonna ask you, how is this gonna help us as far as management of the,
What it does is it gives us the ability to analyze. The city is broken into basins for stormwater. It's also broken into basins for sanitary, but for this discussion, the stormwater, everything drains to a low spot, and there's 100 and some, or is it 300? 312 basins around the entire city, okay? So in each one of those basins, you have to study how the water flows to the inlets, and then once it gets into the storm sewer, how does the water flow through the pipes to its discharge point? So what you do is you're able to put the size of the pipe and the slope of the pipe, and then model how the rainfall comes down, and it takes a look and says, okay, this pipe's full and the water backs up, okay? That's what this will do, is you're actually able to create that pipe network, and then, in theory,
so in other words, in the areas where you're gonna be doing restoration as far as new equipment and everything, you're gonna have the information to do it properly, is what you're saying?
correct. And we're gonna start with the 9 basins that were identified in the stormwater study, but that's just the first 9. This is our first, these are the highest of the high priorities. These are where we get routine street ponding that goes on for hours. So we're gonna use this software to do that. Now we own the software. Now we can go out and engage consultants on other basins, and all they have to do is build the model, as long as they're using the same software. And in our RFP, we tell them, we use this software, and we want you to set it up this way. They build the model, send it back to us.
And over at Lambeau Field, they just built a huge one.
Yep.
Well, how's that gonna tie into our systems?
Okay. I always struggle with a way to describe to non-engineers, because it's really kind of weird. You have a large area that all drains into a pipe, and then that pipe discharges someplace, okay? If all the water gets to the pipe at once, that pipe has to be this big. If instead, in certain areas, I can slow that water down, then this water can get to the pipe and go away, and by the time this water gets to the pipe, that water's already gone, So your pipe doesn't have to be this big, it can be this big.
Was this an issue that they had to get on the, in other words, they had to address right away over at that area?
This is actually an issue that's been hanging out there since they did the first expansion in 2004.
Who funded that one, can I ask?
Well, the team has been doing the expansions on the stadium. But going all the way back to that 2004 expansion, we had been telling them, you need to start doing something with stormwater, you need to start doing something with stormwater. When the stormwater regulations kicked in 2007, 2006, somewhere in that neighborhood, now everything was required, and they continued to do expansion process, around the stadium, and we kept telling them, stormwater, 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 and it was, we'll get it on the next one, we'll get it on the next one. And we finally drew a line in the sand and said, you'll get it on this one.
That's why they had all that water problem with standing water on Oneida Street and things like that?
That's exactly what we're looking to try to correct with this. So what they're building is a very large detention
It's
basin.
huge.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
It's
the-
kind of the same theory as a mini sewer, except on a much larger scale.
Well, what we're looking at, it's like a pond, but the pond is buried under the parking lot. So you retain all that water, and you let the water that's falling everywhere else get into the pipes and go away, and then you let this water come out of this underground pond and feed into your storm sewer system. But you have to give it a place to go, otherwise the pond's in the street.
Might be less flooding on Oneida Street. then.
That's exactly what we're looking to correct. That's exactly what we're looking to correct.
All right, any other discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Number 7 is a request by Department of Public Works to purchase 3 additional licenses and 3 yearly AutoCAD subscriptions from DLT Solutions using the government services pricing contract in the amount of $24,162.24. Director.
Okay, AutoCAD is a design and drafting software. It is the industry standard, okay? With that, AutoCAD requires that you have to purchase a license and you have to purchase an annual subscription in order to use it. This is what we use for all of our engineering projects, not only for infrastructure projects, but anything that we're doing for any other departments. We did come to Finance Committee and request some of the carryover funding to buy 3 additional licenses because the licenses are held on a server, and basically when you're on your computer and you start AutoCAD, it goes out to the server, the license server, and it pulls one available license to your desk and says, okay, I've got one. I think we have 10 right now, and there are frequent times throughout the course of the year, it happens pretty often actually, that somebody gets locked out because all 10 licenses are out there. So that's why we came to the Finance Committee to request carryover funding from last year. We need 3 additional licenses so we can keep people busy, and the more licenses that we have. Well, the licenses being in use means projects getting designed.
So you,
Especially big pool projects.
I'm not designing that one, that's coming from a consultant.
so you buy the license at $7,305, and then there's an annual subscription cost, which currently is $748.62. I don't think we have any choice, so I'll move to approve it.
Motion by Alderman Rennig, second by Alderman Van Baerle to approve. Under discussion, those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Number 8, approval of bridge operation agreement with Wisconsin Department of Transportation for the Mason Street and Walnut Street bridges for fiscal year 2017.
Annually, the city enters into an agreement with the Wisconsin Department of Transportation whereby the DOT reimburses us for the bridge tenders that operate the 3 lift bridges in downtown. Again, remember the Ray Nitschke Memorial Bridge on Main Street is owned by the city of Green Bay, so we don't have to enter into this type of an agreement, but the Walnut Street Bridge and the Don A. Tillman Bridge on Mason Street are DOT bridges. So the agreement covers the state fiscal year 2017, which extends from July 1 of 2016 through June 30th of 2017. This agreement results in a reimbursement of about $520,000 to the city. This summer, the state is also going to be installing a fiber optic cable connecting the 3 bridges, which could potentially allow for remote operations of the Mason and Main Street bridges from Walnut Street, but that's not part of this. We just want to make sure that you remain aware of that. So because this is basically the reimbursement for our bridge tenders, we would recommend that you grant the approval of this agreement and authorize the director to execute that agreement.
Moved by Alderman Van Baerle,
Second.
by Alderman Rennig to approve. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Be number 9. Number 10, review and award of the contract parks project 416, Duane Stadium lighting.
Bids came back extremely favorable on this. Recommend award to low responsive bidder Bodart Electric Service in the amount of $446,753.
Move to approve it.
Now, is that, let's talk about that a little bit.
Is there a, do you want a second, or do you want to talk first?
Talk
Okay, that's
first.
fine. And
That's
then
fine.
Alderman Vanderleest?
What are we doing over there? Let's just.
I believe this is infield lighting.
Correct, outfield.
I thought they had approved $100,000 for the lighting at Joanne's, is that
Well,
correct?
that was to cover, that was because there was an overrun from what we had originally budgeted for the project. And these lights are, one of them fell down last year, and it was a safety issue, and luckily it didn't hit and hurt anyone. And the lighting, the park staff did inspect all the lighting, and they feel that this lighting needs to be upgraded as a safety issue.
A few years ago, we wound up replacing the outfield lights there, and this is just a continuation to replace the infield lighting.
And the cost is $446,000?
Yeah.
How many poles is that?
Absolutely. Offhand, I don't know.
So money was approved previously, and what we did at Parks 2 weeks ago is we approved additional money because the bids were coming in higher. or whatever.
Correct.
Yeah, I know it's a lot of money, but
How bad a shape is that lighting in that we're talking to replace right now?
That you would have to ask Parks Director.
well, the previous park committee did discuss that with our park staff, and it was a high priority. They felt that we have to do it. That there's liability concerns if we don't, that they would have liked to have it done before the baseball season starts, but, you know, at least the information that our prior committee got, it sure sounded like it.
Have they ever, one other question, have they ever discussed with Public Service that they would put in the lighting? Have they ever gone that route?
On
Scott?
something like this, I don't think Public Service would do it. I don't think they do private lighting contracts.
Well,
They
they'll
won't.
put it in your backyard if you want it. It's private, it's as private as you get. But I'm just saying, have they ever discussed it with Public Service? That they furnish it, they take care of it, you pay so much a month?
I don't know. That would be a
I'm just
que-
throwing it out, I'm just throwing it out to you.
That'd be
They
a
do.
question for Parks. What I can tell you, if we can draw parallels, I don't know if it's applicable or not, but if we can draw parallels, as we've been doing reconstruction projects on major city streets, we have found that it's more cost competitive if we purchase the lighting system and we maintain it with our own forces, as opposed to going.
What about all your streetlights here in the city of Green Bay?
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
How many of them, let's say down Shawano Avenue?
Most of that is all WPS, but when we reconstructed Military Avenue, we own that lighting system. When we reconstructed Velp Avenue, we own that lighting system. When we reconstructed Monroe Avenue, we own that lighting system. As we are getting into residential subdivisions, if it's large enough to warrant a system, we are starting to acquire those systems because it's cheaper for us to own and maintain them than it is to pay the WPS rates.
So in other words, it's a cost, we're looking at the cost factors here.
Yes.
Yeah, if you look at the city budget, I forget what the amount is, but it's millions that we.
Street
pay
level electricity,
a
about
year.
1.8 million.
Yeah, about 1.8 million for electricity for streetlights.
Now, has this money been budgeted? Has this
Yeah.
money been budgeted?
This is part of Parks capital program. Yes.
Yeah, we should have probably asked Park about it at our last meeting, but I know that they're in favor of
Yeah, and
proceeding with this.
Dan Ditchite was at the bid opening yesterday, and I did have a conversation with Donnie earlier today, Director Kramer, and they are both in agreement with award of this contract. And it's their money.
It's gonna do all the lighting in the whole park?
No, it's just for the stadium. The infield lighting for the ball diamond. Yeah, sports lighting is expensive.
I think the ball club better stay over there.
Well, this also takes care of high school teams. I believe there's Babe Ruth or something, Legion teams, all users of the stadium utilize this lighting.
So in other words, it's gonna benefit more than just one?
Oh, God, yes, yeah.
Okay, well, that's, I can understand that.
So I guess I'd suggest that we approve it, and if there are questions that we need answered from Park, that we could get those answered before the council meeting. It might not be a bad idea to call out Donnie and just discuss it with him. But at least everything that I've heard, they're in favor of this, and this is certainly within what they were expecting. So I move to approve it.
Motion by Alderman Rennig to approve. Is there a second? Second by Alderman Vanderleest. Under discussion, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. That was to approve the award to Bodart Electric.
Yes.
For $446,753. All right, number 11, approval and payment of the following easements. Easement for sidewalks along Morrow Street between Beard Creek and Dan's Avenue, Wisconsin Public Service, $10.
This actually goes back several years. Morrow Street is adjacent to Baird Creek between Dan's Avenue and Henry Street, at least in this location that we're talking about. And that's a concrete street there, and there is a couple of multifamily complexes on the south side of Morrow. And the residents there have no sidewalk which to travel along Morrow Street to get down to Dan's and then north on Dan's up into the University Avenue shopping areas. So a request came forward a couple of years ago through INS to have a sidewalk study performed, and then sidewalks were ordered in. We haven't been able to get the sidewalks completed because with one of the multifamily apartment complexes, there were some rather large trees there that they wanted us to avoid, so we needed to get an easement out of them, and then we ran into some wetland impacts on a parcel that was owned by Wisconsin Public Service. So we've been negotiating those easements, and I believe this is the last easement that we need. It looks kind of funny when you see an easement for $10. It used to be $1 and other such valuable consideration, and the dollar never changes hands. Okay, so the state came along and said you can't use that dollar, so now it's $10 and other such valuable consideration, and we never exchanged the $10. But you can't have an easement for no land. So that's why.
There'll be 2 more easements coming in for this.
Oh, okay.
This is the first.
This is the first of the 3 that we needed.
So we're doing sidewalk on the south side.
It'll be on the south side of Morrow.
Dan's to
South side of Morrow from,
Dan's to Henry.
I don't,
It's basically from above Beard Creek Parkway up to Dan's. It's
I'm
not
trying to remember what the name of the
apartments.
The apartment complex is.
Wasn't it the creek?
Something like, if
something
you look on the
Creek
south.
Trail or Trail Creek?
If you look on the south side of
Yeah.
south side of Morrow Street, there's a bus stop.
Right, yes.
So it'll connect the bus stop down to Dan's Avenue.
Okay, well, this is in my district, and I see people with wheelchairs out on the street all the time, so that, it's definitely something I think is needed there. I'll move to approve the easement.
Motion by Alderman Rennig to approve. Is there a second? Second by Alderman Vanderleest. Discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Number 12 are applications for concrete sidewalk or builder licenses by the following. A is A&M Concrete and Construction, Inc., B is Concrete Specialists.
A&M has held a concrete sidewalk builder's license in the past, so we do recommend approval of them. Concrete Specialists is a new company to us, at least. We have not had a chance to review the references, but we would request conditional approval pending a positive outcome of reference checks.
Move to approve.
Approve. Motion approved. Second.
Motion by Alderman Rennig, second by Alderman Vanderleest to approve as stated. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. 13, application for tree and brush trimmer license by Top Notch Tree Service.
very similar to Concrete Specialist. Top Notch is a new company to us, and we are in the process of conducting their reference checks. Rather than hold this up for a month, what we'd request is that if the reference checks come back positive, give us, to allow us to have the authority to approve them and issue the license.
Motion by Alderman Vanderleest,
Second.
second by Alderman Nenning to approve. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Number 14, applications for underground sprinkler system licenses by the following: A, The Sprinkler Company, Inc., and B, Irrigation Doctors, LLC.
This time, they both had licenses in the past, so staff recommends approval.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Nenning, second by Alderman Vanderleest to approve. Discussion. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. 15, Director's Report on recent activities of the Public Works Department.
3 items for you tonight. First of which, just a reminder, in case you start getting phone calls from constituents, this is the last round. We're in the last round right now, so everyone should have had their yard waste out to the curb by Mondays to ensure that as we come around, it's there. So loose or yard waste, spring yard waste collection ends this week. We will be switching over our equipment, and we'll start with citywide grass cutting and nuisance cutting next week, which I don't know if you folks have noticed it, but boy, I sure have at my home. I've been cutting grass for 3 weeks already. So loose leaf, grass cutting, and then the third thing that I wanted to bring up was, we had talked about this a couple of weeks ago. Staff maintains, we just sort of build a little calendar that's used internally for our own purposes.
I just had one quick question.
Yep.
On that grass cutting, what does the city charge if you have a lot that you have to come out and cut? Just so I can mention to some people that in my district are slovent, and, you know, I just say, well, it's gonna cost you $75 for
It's not a fixed fee, it's based on time.
one time, okay.
So I do have those numbers, I'll give you the rates, but I'll send those, would you like them hard
You can-
copied,
You can
emailed,
just put them in my
in your
mailbox
mailbox?
sometimes.
Happy to do that for
That
you.
way I can just pass it along. 'Cause
Well,
some people
and that'll
are,
have all of our service charges on it, so.
good.
And this is good information too. Who's the best person to email? And I always email you, Steve.
And
Me too.
And that's fine. For lawn grass and weeds, it's actually the weed commission. Remember, we had this discussion at council, and it seemed kind of funny. There actually is a statutory requirement. State statutes require that we name a weed commissioner every year. That's an appointed position. So lawn grass and weed issues go to Tony Feetzer. He is the weed commissioner.
That's not his only duty, but that's.
No.
fine.
And just for the record, Tony's at 492-3737. So again, staff, we've been doing this for years, just so that we have an idea of when we'd be looking at most probable meeting dates. And we're set on Wednesday nights now. I know we had a discussion that Alderman Vanderleest and Alderman Nicholson may have some conflicts due to county board. So this is the target schedule that we have for the year. Obviously, we've shown INS, but Parks meets the same night, so you can use it for the same purpose. All we're doing is we're getting it out in front of you, so you folks have a chance to take a look at it and anticipate any potential conflict dates, so we can potentially reschedule if we need to do that.
Well, we've talked about that a little, and June is a potential conflict because of the county board.
Which actually works out nice, only having the one council meeting in June. We can easily move that up to the June 8th date instead, if that would work. So nothing we need to decide tonight. Either Director Kramer or myself will send an email off to the 4 members of the committee, and we'll get that taken care of plenty of time in advance.
Do earlier meetings work for you, Chris, or not?
5's about as early as I could go right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if it's a matter of trying to make sure that we're avoiding conflict, if moving earlier in the day is not good, especially during these summer months, but moving to a different day if we've got that ability, I think that's a better alternative for everybody. The only thing I would caution you is we can't go to Thursdays because we have to have our council reports in by Thursday morning. So that's just physically impossible to get our report on the following week's council agenda. But that doesn't come into play until September when we go back to 2-a-month meetings. So at least for the summer, we're gonna have some flexibility to move around. And then let's just take a look at those, September, October, November, to see if there's potential conflicts with county board. And again, trying to get this into your hands as early as possible so we can anticipate those, and now we've got time to make whatever adjustments we need to make. moving to a Tuesday or a Monday isn't the worst thing in the world, but again, what we've been trying to do for the last several years is make sure that the 5 standing committees don't meet on the same night, so that aldermen have the ability to go to other council meeting, or other committee meetings and not miss their own, or have something on 2 committees or what have you.
And it's also boards and commissions
Sure.
that might,
Yeah.
be a factor as well.
So we just wanted to get that into your hands,
Thank you.
Yeah.
and that concludes the director's report.
Move to receive and place on file the director's report.
Motion by Alderman Rennig, second by Alderman Vanderleest to receive and place on file. Discussion, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carried. Number 16, request by Department of Public Works to award contracts in the 2016 Capital Improvement Program at a staff level, subject to the following conditions. A, the 2016 Capital Improvement Program provides sufficient funding for each program fund. B, delay in bringing forward a recommendation to award at the next regularly scheduled committee meeting would result in an unacceptable delay in starting construction. And C, any projects awarded would be reported out at the next regularly scheduled meeting of the Improvement and Service Committee.
This was a request we first brought forward last year, and the reason for it is because as we go into the summer schedule, we only meet once a month, and there's a high probability that due to our bidding schedule, we could wind up bidding a project and having to sit on the award of that project for a month, which obviously, when you only get a couple of months of construction in Wisconsin, is not a good thing. So it's
Especially for pools.
especially the effect of delaying an award of contract has negative impacts of increased cost, potentially jeopardizing the ability to complete. So in a situation like this, and again, we were granted this authority last year, what I would do is if we had a contract that would be unreasonable to delay, I would contact the chair of the committee, let the chair know that a contract a bid was opened, what the apparent low bidder is, if there were any concerns with it, and verify that we had program funding identified in the CIP and we were within our funding limits, and just have that discussion with the chair, and the chair would say, yeah, I'm in agreement, go ahead and award the contract and report out. We would not do this just at will, and there's definitely no intent to not bring things to the improvement service. If the bid schedule allows us to bring it to INS, we're bringing it to INS, and you guys get to approve it. All we want to do is make sure that we're not delaying contracts due to the summer meeting schedule. So again, we've got very, very narrow criteria under which we're allowed to do this, and I will always be in contact, and if it's the desire of the committee that I talk to all 4 instead of just the chair, I'm happy to do that as well. All we're trying to do is make sure we're not delaying contractors, we're getting our projects out.
Why don't we bring it to the attention of each person then?
Yeah, just an email would probably be fine.
More than happy, more than
Email it
happy.
to everybody, and if we have any concerns, we can let you know.
Certainly. Perfect. Yep.
Um,
Hasn't come up yet, right?
Nope.
Yeah, and typically, this committee, if a project is within the budget and, it's something that we've approved in bonding, and it's within the budget, we typically award it to the low bidder anyway. But, it does give us an opportunity if we have questions on it,
Mhm.
to ask those questions. I think that's fair.
Any other questions, or
Move to approve the request.
motion to approve the request by Alderman Rennig, second by Alderman Vanderleest. Under discussion, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, those opposed, motion carried. Motion to adjourn, Alderman Vanderleest, second by Alderman Rennig. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. We're adjourned.
One hour.